Hi, everyone. My name is Ohad, and I'm going to be very fast. I'm going to talk to you very quickly about ethical artificial intelligence, or rather machine learning for financial inclusion and what it means. Very quickly go through the unique challenge of machine learning for financial services and how it's different from generic machine learning or artificial intelligence, the way maybe we're thinking about it today. Talk about what I think the mission can and should be for machine learning in financial services, and then talk about 3 examples where we can use technology to actually make a difference in financial technology for people. First and foremost, why am I talking to you about this today? I've been dealing with this specific topic for more than 13 years now. So the way machine learning replaces human decisions in fintech in many areas. Fraud Sciences did machine learning for fraud prevention in e-commerce, got acquired by PayPal in 2008. Analyzed did machine learning for consumer credit underwriting online, and was acquired by Klarna, a Swedish payments company that you may or may not know. I was their chief risk officer for 2 years. And through Accord, the company I'm CEO of now, is using machine learning and behavioral economics to radically change the user experience for consumers in debt collection. We're focused on the US, but you'd be surprised how big this problem is in the US. Another thing that is quasi-relevant for this today, I'm on the Consumer Advisory Board for the CFPB, the biggest financial regulator in the US. So this has a little bit of a policy-making aspect to it as well, which I don't think we have time to get into, so I won't, but just trying to establish that I've been looking at this from various angles. How is artificial intelligence and machine learning for financial services different than what we're thinking about usually when we think about artificial intelligence? First and foremost, this is not a super smart, generic machine figuring stuff out. There's a lot of moving pieces here, dealing with humans, their decision making, and all the changes, all the minute details that involve humans making decisions. First and foremost, much smaller data sets with lower signal-to-noise ratio. This is not about people talking and understanding their speech, for example. It's about making transactions online. It's about taking loans. It's about paying up debt or saving. It happens a lot less frequently than what we think about as generic artificial intelligence, autonomous driving or stuff like that. So really picking out how to build the algorithms and how to design them, how to use data and how available it is a big issue. 2, the late and noisy performance flag. Humans change their mind very often. So trying to predict what they want is complex. The gap between declared and revealed preference in financial services, what humans say they want and what they actually want, as you observe from their behavior, is pretty big. So trying to understand, for example, somebody made a transaction, then a month later they said, oh, that wasn't me, or I didn't mean to do it. Was that really something? Should we have prevented them from doing that or not? Another example is there is a very strong correlation between mentions of God in applications for loans and defaults, meaning the more often the applicant mentions God and promises to God to pay back the loan, the more likely they are to default on the loan. Right, so this is not a consideration of religion or anything like that. It's just research that's been done in the US to show that the things that we say are not the things that we do many times. So it's very hard to detect that. Of course, regulatory sensitivity here in Europe around data protection, in the US as well around fair lending is very complex, and changing conditions. In fraud prevention, you used to work versus an adversary, meaning you have a system that protects from various malicious behaviors. Once they figure it out, they will do something else. In lending, you think you figure something out, or in debt collection, you think you figure something out, and then a macro trend changes, and then the way the people work, the availability of money to make payments changes, and you have to adapt. So these are issues that are, in a sense, very unique to machine learning in financial services, and we have to take that into consideration. My proposal is that this is the goal for should be the goal for AI and financial services because the technology unlocks so much value, potentially, that it can drive a lot of good for consumers and a lot of good for our economic structures if we apply it correctly, if we apply it ethically, if we apply it in a thoughtful manner that's aimed to unlock value for everybody involved and not only for the people implementing the algorithms. And I'll talk about 3 examples. 1, because of the complexity of servicing consumers, and by the way, many of my examples are US-based. However, you would be, if you're not from the US or you're not familiar with the conditions in the US, you'd be surprised how many states and how many areas in the US behave like third world countries. So this can be extrapolated to other countries, but I'm focusing on the US. Banks are moving out of niches because they don't know how to service consumers who are high-risk consumers in an effective way. They're taking away their bank accounts because consumers can't afford to pay the minimum monthly fee. They're taking away their ability to check cash because you need the money now. You can't get it in 5 days or in 7 days when the money is going to be available in the bank account that you may or may not have. They're taking away their credit cards because it's very difficult for a bank to price correctly for those high default consumers. Because subprime consumers in the US and internationally are constantly in crisis. There's no financial crisis for people who are subprime. Every day is financial crisis. And therefore, it's very hard to price for. So category number 1 of what machine learning and AI can do is they unlock value by being more precise in making decisions and by improving automation so that if we have better margins, we can share them with the consumer to an extent. And even if we have a for-profit company, create a product that is much more consumer-friendly and much more inclusive in its financial services than what financial services are currently offered to consumers. And an example from True Accord, a company dealing with debt collection. Because of machine learning, our margins are so much better. We're not a profitable company, we're a startup. But because of that, our margins are good enough so that we never have to resort to convenience fees. It's very common if a consumer wants to pay for their debt with a card, they're charged a $15 convenience fee per payment, which is absurd. It's harvesting fees from vulnerable consumers, right? So no fees, no interest, very flexible payment options because of the scale, because of the automation, because of the efficiencies that machine learning affords us. Number 2, and I know I'm over time, technology is putting a human face on finance. People are treating Alexa like a family member. Okay, you may or may not have seen the demo from Google where a human voice, a computer with a human voice calls on the phone to schedule a meeting. So technology is here, and technology using machine learning allows us to create an experience for consumers that feels more relatable, more empathetic, touches them when and where they want to be handled. Okay? Talks to them in context. And again, when we talk at True Accord about what we do, instead of calling a consumer 5 times per day, hoping to get them on the phone, sending them letters, and so on, we start from digital communication. We send them an email 2 to 3 times per week. We look at their behavior. We learn from their behavior in real time to understand from their implied browsing patterns and so on, what they looked at and where their eyes went and where their mouse went and what they clicked on. What is the next step? What is the next communication? What is the next offer to put in front of them so that they actually will be able to resolve their debt? And this is one example of many. I don't really have time to go into other examples. But the idea is that machine learning allows us to treat consumers the way they want to be treated. It allows us to offer them empathy. It allows us to offer them the personalization and targeting that they need in order to actually be serviced, to actually achieve their goals. And by the way, none of this, of what I'm mentioning here, begets tracking of the problematic kind, meaning it's not about tracking them on the web and seeing what they do and what they do on Facebook and what websites they browse to. Actually limiting ourselves in the amount of data we have available and challenging ourselves to build algorithms that are effective while not hoarding too much data is a real challenge, but also a surmountable challenge that creates more effective, more empathetic systems. And the last example is UX empathy for the reluctant consumer. We talk a lot, I haven't heard that at the conference yet, but we talk a lot about dark patterns, the way design pushes consumers to do things that are not healthy for them by tapping into our weaknesses as humans, tapping into the serotonin cycle and giving us rewards for things that we don't necessarily want to do. Like, for example, check our notifications and see if we have new emails, if we have new messages on social media. Well, it turns out that if you look at it the right way, you can use those mechanisms to encourage people to actually do something positive about their life. So one of the examples that I like the most is the low self-efficacy, the couch potato issue. Many of the consumers we work with almost 3 million consumers, so we're talking tens to hundreds of thousands of consumers, want to pay for their debt but don't have a job. They're home, they can't find a job, even in this current market. We said, okay, we'll help you find a job, just send us your resume and we'll connect you to an employer that can actually employ you. 0 responses. Because the perception of these people who are at home, haven't found a job, are crushed under debt, are crushed under life circumstances, is that they cannot pull themselves out and nobody can help them. However, when we found out that we can use a vendor to offer them a work-from-home scheme where they just browse to a page, participate in a program, and every day work for a few hours for a salary that's reasonable, more than the minimum salary in their state, they will do that. And they will make hundreds of dollars, and they will pay for their debt. So finding those mechanisms that can be triggered by consumer behavior, and again, all of this is triggered by machine learning that learns from consumer behavior at scale in order to be able to target and personalize the experience for those individual consumers, we can encourage positive financial behavior that actually improves the consumer's well-being instead of continuing to push them down. I'm out of time. Thank you very much. Look forward to the panel.